Speaker, Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. I am proud, once again, Mr. Speaker, to stand in the well of the House. I'm proud to do so today, Mr. Speaker, in defense of liberty and justice for all. Mr. Speaker, if we know the truth, it can set us free. A Quinnipiac poll, Mr. Speaker, as of July 3rd, this month, this year, a poll indicates that 49% of Americans believe that the President of the United States is a racist. 49%, nearly 50% of the country. Wonder why? Could it be because of Charlottesville? Could it be because of a Muslim ban? Could it be because of the way this president has instituted policies, such as the one that has impacted Latinos at the border, taking babies from their mothers, segregating them such that babies don't have contact with their parents? 49% of the people believe that the president is a racist. Mr. Speaker, same poll, 55% believe that he has emboldened people who hold racist beliefs to express those beliefs publicly. The President of the United States is having an adverse impact on society. He's causing people to do ugly things. Mr. Speaker, the polls also show, this is a Harris poll, that 42% believe that the President of the United States of America should be impeached. That number would be higher, by the way, if not but for the effort to suppress impeachment. And I must compliment the people who are engaged in that effort. They have done exceedingly well. Some people dare not say the word impeachment. I am so glad, however, so thankful, so grateful that Dr. King was not guided by polls, because there are some polls that would cause persons to do what they should not. If you're waiting on the polls to tell you that the president ought to be impeached, you may be waiting a long time. If you're waiting on the polls to get to 60, 70, 80%, you may be waiting a long time. I'm so glad that Dr. King did not wait for the polls to tell him to protest segregation and discrimination. The bus boycott probably wouldn't have taken place in Montgomery if there had been a wait for the polls. They probably wouldn't have crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge if there had been a wait for the polls. I'm so glad that people of goodwill will stand up to bigotry, will take a stand. They don't let political expediency trump the moral imperative to speak out and speak up. I'm so glad that there are people who put the moral imperative above political expediency. And finally this, for those of you who worship at the altar of polls, when President Clinton was impeached, 29% of the people thought that he should be impeached. 29%. There are some people who are not guided by polls. I am one of them. Bigotry emanating from the presidency is impeachable because of the harm that it's doing to society. Impeachment is not dead. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back, and members are reminded